Remember when I said that I prepped for a project last February, but then kept putting it off because I was afraid it would get all involved and take too long? This is it! I'm a big advocate of you don't need fancy tools to sew your own clothes. And that includes dress forms, really dress forms of any kind, whether it's just a basic one, or a size adjusting one, or a custom one. You don't really need it. That being said, they are pretty handy. I got this one off of Facebook Marketplace a while ago now. I think she asked like $40 for it, and considering that it was somewhat close to my actual body measurements, I was like, sure, yeah, why not? This'll tide me over. It has indeed tided. But I'm at the point in my sewing journey where I would like to start exploring more, trying more, challenging myself more. And as I am a person who struggles with using patterns or even with drafting patterns myself, I much stronger hear the call of draping. I'd love to try draping. You kinda need a dress form that's exactly your size to drape though, right? I mean, you can like kind of fudge a little bit, but why? Why not just get a custom sized dress form? Well, because they can be super expensive. So why not just make yourself a custom sized dress form? Because they can still be kind of expensive or super difficult or just not very good and worth the effort in the end. Or so we may think. There are several methods for creating your own custom sized dress form, and y'all know how much I love a good compare and contrast. Hello. Do you love a good compare and contrast? If it is snack related, 'tis time to get semi-scientific. Thank you. I have selected 3 different methods which I kind of consider to be easy, intermediate, and advanced-ish, and which theoretically will have rising price tags to boot. Maybe. This will not be a tutorial for any of these methods. If I follow or find helpful any specific video, I'll link it for you in the description. This is just gonna be a follow along, see how it goes. Let's look at the effort put in, the skill needed, and the price tag compared to how good the final product is, how good and accurate. Before we get into it though, allow me a moment of your time to introduce the sponsor of today's video, Lumi. Lumi is a whole body deodorant invented by OBGYN Shannon Klingman. It is clinically proven to block body odor all day and continue controlling BO for 72 hours. This stuff is not just for your pits. You can put it anywhere on the body to stop odor before it starts. I personally love that Lumi has a wide variety of application methods: stick, cream, spray, and even wipes. While I prefer the stick for my armpits, especially since Lumi doesn't stain your clothes, the wipes are great for cleaning up sweaty areas when I want to feel refreshed. The body cream hydrates, exfoliates, and blocks odors, so I've been using it on my arms. And y'all, as a certified sock hater, I have always struggled with smelly feet, so I've been using the spray before putting on shoes, and I'm so impressed with the results. Not only is Lumi paraben and baking soda free, vegan, and pH optimized for use anywhere on your body, they also have an entire line of aluminum-free products. They have 8 different scents available. My favorite are the clean tangerine and lavender sage. So you'll be smelling delightful no matter what your nose prefers. Lumi's starter pack bundle is a great deal for new customers. It comes with a full-size stick deodorant, a cream deodorant tube or spray deodorant, 2 free products like the wipes or mini body wash, free US shipping, and just for my followers, Lumi is offering an extra $5 off when you click the link in the description below and enter code STITCHERY at checkout. That's a deal of over 40% off. Thank you so much to Lumi for sponsoring this chunk of a video, and let's get to it, shall we? Method 1, duct tape and spray foam. Maybe. This is what I'm expecting to be the easiest, cheapest, and least skill requiring custom dress form, because we shouldn't even have to sew anything. Granted, all of these positives also create a negative. It's not gonna be pretty. Not like you. First thing I needed was a t-shirt. I used an old one of Matt's that was already in our donate pile, so that cost me $0. We shall not consider how much it cost him back in whatever era he purchased it. To make it fit more snugly with less wrinkles, I just quickly ran some seams up the inside and cut off the excess material. I also used some cling wrap to cover my neck and hips a bit more, but this was such an insignificant amount that I'm not gonna bother calculating the cost. You don't have to use the packing stuff like this, just the kitchen version is perfectly fine. Next thing you need is a second human. Yeah, you can't really do this to yourself and get a decent result. Hopefully, there's a human in your life that you can coerce into assisting you with promises of cookies, giggles, or the continuation of your successful partnership. But not everyone has someone available to them at any random time, me included. You could try something like TaskRabbit, but duct taping your boobs is likely outside their terms of service. Feels more like a Craigslist thing. Please don't actually do that. That's probably a bad idea. My second human, $0, used 1.5 rolls of duct tape to totally encase my torso, which cost $6.67. The duct tape, not my torso. I'm calculating the cost of 2 full rolls since you can't buy half a roll, and we're gonna use more later on anyway. We're not just considering the price tag here, but also the effort and skill needed. I'd say this step was mid-effort, low skill, and not super time consuming. Took less than an hour start to finish. With the form sliced up the back, taped closed again, and trimmed down at all the openings, I then stuffed it full of scraps for no real reason. I just didn't want to leave it all smashed and floppy while I went to lunch. This would be a good time to point out though that you can just stuff one of these things with fabric scraps. That's an option. I will not be doing that, and I don't know that I'd really recommend it due to the amount you need and the weight. This is already a chunk, and it's not even fully stuffed. Our next supply is cardboard, which I pulled out of ye old box o' cardboard that we always have in the garage. So once again, I'ma count that as $0. There's also like tools and stuff required here, but I don't think I need to calculate in the cost of scissors and markers and such. Semi-scientific! She yells into the wind. We are attempting to get some cardboard pieces to fill the 4 holes as properly shaped as possible, and this was fiddly. Ta-da! Once again, a second pair of hands would, or in some cases did, come in handy. Hands in handy. I was okay with the neck and the arms. Having it stuffed did help a bit. And you don't need a giant basket of fabric scraps for this temporary stuffing. You could literally just throw your pile of dirty laundry in there. But that bottom piece was really hard to do on my own. I'll be back. Once I was satisfied with the cardboard, we move on to the inner support. If you want this thing to be freestanding on some sort of stand, it needs a pole or a hole or something. Also, you generally want to add some sort of support in the shoulder region so they don't collapse up there. I found this to be the most difficult, per se, part of the process, not only to do, but also to figure out how to do. There are lots of varying methods you can use that people have shared about online, but I found that often they don't go into a lot of great detail on this particular step, which I assume is because everyone is winging it. Here's how I wung it. I got a 5-foot piece of 3/4 inch PVC pipe, $5.35. A 2-foot piece of 1/2 inch PVC pipe, $2.92, and a T-shaped connector thing, $1.64. I then sliced the 2-foot piece in half, and here's the part where this becomes less straightforward and approachable for everyone because I did use the jigsaw for that. You could definitely do it with a handsaw though. This T-shape now creates a dress form scarecrow. There is so much fumbling around in this process. I cut off the ends of the T-shape to perfectly fit inside the armholes and then started taping the armholes closed with those cardboard pieces. Once again, quite fiddly. Second pair of hands could help, but not impossible to do on your own. I went ahead and taped up the neck hole before marching off to the other side of the house to procure the free labor of my second human again. So I got 6 cans of spray foam at $6.48 each. That's $38.88 total, because the one blog I looked at where someone used spray foam to fill it said she used 6 cans. What I did not look into is exactly what type of spray foam she or anyone else used. So I basically scanned the shelf at the hardware store and grabbed the one that said it expanded the most. In retrospect, I don't think this was the right style to use. So 6 cans got us about half full. I also realized at this point, because I'm the best at planning ahead, that this stuff takes 8 hours to cure. So we created this grand little contraption to hold the dress form off the ground and that middle pole in the proper place overnight. It did continue to slowly expand over more time, so we're a little more than half full now, but yeah. This was not the best plan. Whoops! Okay, so I should have done way more research on the spray foam thing. That's on me. Namely because it's still soft. The top layer is hard, but I'm lightly concerned that it's been out there for like 12 hours and all of this is still squishy. Is it not able to cure if it doesn't have oxygen or something? Because that bottom layer is solid now, nothing's coming out. But yeah, I really wanted to try the spray foam just because I am making 3 of these and I'm almost definitely filling the other 2 with stuffing. So like, just for variety, I wanted to try it out. I don't think this was the right kind of spray foam. I think a more powerful spray foam would have filled the whole thing out better, not just like filled it more, but would have actually like forcibly pushed the tape outward to its full potential. She's only full to here. And that was with 6 cans of this stuff, and I don't feel like buying any more. So I'm gonna leave it for a while to see if it'll stop being squishy everywhere else. Like, is it ever gonna cure and set, or not? And then I'm stuffing the rest with regular stuffing. Lessons learned, experiments experimented, advice passed on. If you want to fill it with spray foam, do more research than I did. I am gonna go ahead while that dries and cut off my PVC pipe where I want it, which is like here, because this is how tall it currently is. The stand that I am using for this is an old tripod that I think maybe came with my soft boxes, or possibly I got it for free with a ring light kit that was given to me. I can't really remember, but because it was already here in the house, the current cost for me was $0. I'm also just gonna be using this same one for all 3 dress forms, so you could basically say the stand just doesn't calculate into the total cost. It's just the dress forms themselves. After a couple hours, I decided, aw heck, this thing ain't gonna cure properly, so let's just get on with it. I secured half the bottom cardboard piece in there, then stuffed it like crazy. Ended up using about half of a 2-pound bag of stuffing, which I got at Joann when it was 40% off. Never buy a bag of stuffing at full cost. That means the full bag was $12.74, and since the rest is usable in another project, I'm gonna say my cost was $6.37. I taped the rest of the cardboard on there, and tra-la! Dress form number 1 is complete. I think that's as good as it's gonna get. Y'all, this plant is my new best plant. It's not new, but like, it's my favorite plant. It does so well. It's noticeably growing. I just love it. I love it so much. Okay, initial final thoughts on dress form number 1. The final cost was $62.33, over half of which is that spray foam. Here is the breakdown. Obviously, this would differ a lot depending on how many tools and supplies you already have on hand. And then without even knowing how much stuffing it would have taken to fill this whole thing, I can guarantee it would have been cheaper to use stuffing. The total time to make this was 2 days for me, but not anywhere close to full days. The only reason it had to be 2 days was because of the spray foam, so you could absolutely do this in 1 day. I'm not super great at timing things perfectly, but my estimation would be that this type of dress form should take no more than like 6 hours of labor tops, regardless of how you choose to fill it. And then the skill level required, pretty low. So, pros. It's fast. I haven't done the other two yet, but I know for a fact that they will take longer than this one. It's pretty cheap. Again, I don't have those comparison numbers yet, but simply because this one does not require fabric, I guarantee it's cheaper. It's decently accurate, more so than a generic dress form. And it doesn't require sewing skills. You do not need to know how to sew to make this dress form. Cons. It's not the prettiest. You can't pin into it. Pins will not go through this, which is actually a pretty big con. You are on your own to figure out the support system inside, and it does require a second person to make it. And I would say that a con is that mine is pretty wonky in places, like it didn't get filled out properly, but that is operator error. That is from me trying to use spray foam without researching it properly first. So I don't think that's a real con, that's just my con. I would really recommend just using stuffing. 1 down, 2 to go. Now we get into actual sewing skills required, because next up is the Bootstrap's custom dress form. This company's been around for a bit. Several people made their dress forms and made videos about it, and they kind of had varying reviews as far as how effective and accurate the final product was. Why am I sitting like hunched over my desk like a little goblin? Basically, they are making you a custom pattern. You enter all of your measurements, not even just the basic ones that you would think of, but also stuff like posture and buttock shape. I guessed average for me. I think I have an average butt. Then they process all of that info and they send you the final PDF for your custom dress form. My guess is that there's no way for it to be as perfectly fitting as making a mold of your body, because they're still just operating off of measurements and even guesses on the part of the customer. But we shall see. I did order this pattern like a year ago. Really thought I'd be ready to go there, really wasn't. So I do think that I've gained an inch on my waist since then. If it's not quite accurate in that area though, I will take that into consideration. Also y'all, second chicken mug. Isn't it cute? I love this one. It's such a good size. I've already been using it like crazy. Kim, if you are watching, thank you so much. I love it, I appreciate it. When I bought it, this pattern was $28, and just because I feel like I have to say it, this is not sponsored by Bootstraps in any way, shape, or form. First up, we've got to print that pattern out. They do include very thorough instructions on how to print your pattern in the proper size using Adobe. I just printed it from good old Preview, but I did check their calibration page first to make sure all was okay. And then promptly forgot to turn off double-sided printing. Whoops! This took 23 pages of paper and of course the ink, though it's not a heavy amount, which I do appreciate. Not to mention requiring me to have a printer, so I feel like this should affect the cost in some way. There's also all the tape required to put the pieces together. According to my calculations, 23 pages of paper cost about 41 cents, so I'm gonna go wildly unscientific and say this whole bit cost me $2. It also cost me over an hour of time, which isn't bad. It wasn't unpleasant work. I'm just not used to devoting that much time to the prep of my tools. Done. Finally, time for fabric. I've got 3 yards of this floral fabric that I got from Swanson's for $5 a yard. We'll see once I'm done how much of it I actually use, because it shouldn't be that much. I also have half a yard of this thick canvas twill denim. I don't know, it's sturdy stuff, which I believe I got for free from my sister. I don't think it's quite enough for the inner stabilizing pieces it's for, so I also pulled this plain brown fabric in case I need a bit for any extra pieces. I'm just gonna calculate the full yardage I use at the end and do it all as $5 a yard. That's already pretty dang cheap for fabric. Yay thrifting! After much careful placement, I managed to get all the inner pieces except one out of the white material, and just that center pole holder out of the brown. On to the other stuff, I started with a quick debate on pattern matching. There's so many pieces, it would be so confusing to try to pattern match, and I would waste so much fabric. No, I can't do it. I cannot bring myself to do it. And unsurprisingly, decided against it. Here we go. This pattern does not include seam allowance. You gotta add that yourself. And I'm also trying to be really thorough and precise. So I'm drawing on seam lines and notches and everything, and it's taking a while. There are just so many pieces. About 3 hours later, I was done cutting everything out, except the interfacing. I don't wanna. I really don't want to cut corners on this. I want to give it my all and do the best I can. So after making excuses and trying to get out of it all night long, I decided to commit. We're adding the interfacing. And yes, I should have just added it at the beginning like they told me to in the instructions. That's on me. I just didn't want a bunch of leftover material with interfacing stuck on the back because I don't know what I'm making out of the rest. But I also realized in the midst of this process that it would be better to draw the seam lines on the back of the fabric, where you actually sew. At last, with a total prep time of about 5 hours, it's time to sew. And yes, it is several days later because yes, I have been procrastinating on this project. Thank you for asking. Their instructions are detailed, but are very much sew and iron, whereas I'm more of a sew and sew and sew and sew and then iron everything at once person. So I kind of did my own thing while also following their directions pretty specifically, just like in a slightly different order. I will say it would be very helpful to have some pressing tools for this, like a ham or whatever the various things are called. Clearly I have none of those, but I may do. This definitely isn't a beginner sewing project. There are a lot of curves that are difficult to match up and you really have to trust the process. It was definitely worth it for me to have those seam lines drawn on, and it was better to keep them and pin like crazy and leave ironing towards later in the process. Fits great! By the time I got to adding the circular neck piece, I was getting a little loopy. Yeah. Curves. What do you... Wait, what? Oh yeah, so sweet. This is gonna suck. Did I even frame this well? Yeah. Did I do it? I think it's okay. We're gonna go with it. Moving on! I didn't cut out my armhole covers in this fabric. I only did it in the inside fabric. Whoops! I'll be back. Got the armhole covers cut out and on there, and now we're back to cardboard. Once again, pulled from my stash of trash, costing me $0. In the end, I used over 2 full spools of thread to create this, which are usually $4 each at Joann, I think, but I'll assume I got them on sale, because why would I not, and we'll say they were $2 each. They have you stuff the neck with a sponge to keep it in shape and turn it into a pincushion, so I used this leftover pillow foam from my citrus slice pillows. Since I already had it on hand and I didn't plan to use it for anything else, I'm counting that as $0. The 2 zippers for the bottom, I very likely got at Remainders since they aren't in a package, where they sell them 6 for $5 if I recall correctly. If I recall incorrectly, the other option is 50 cents each. So we'll round up and call these $1 each. They do not really match, and I do not really care. And I was actually able to use the other half of the 5-foot PVC pipe from Dress Form 1, so I'm gonna say that cost me $2.67. Me numbers are getting schmeary, y'all. It can't be helped. Getting the bottom covering attached was definitely the most difficult part of this whole process. It wasn't lining up, so I pinned and clipped and repinned and reclipped over and over again. Nothing was working. After stabbing my finger with the seam ripper and absolutely destroying a needle, I turned the whole dress form right side out, unzipped the bottom piece and turned it wrong side out, and did one side at a time. Hours, y'all. Literal hours. But it's all good now. Moving on. Then there was the stuffing. 10 pounds of it, baby. I was wondering how 10 pounds fit in such a small box.
It's still growing.
Y'all think this will be enough? Well, that was fun. I got this on sale, of course, for $36, and after shoving my arm deep in this thing about 50 times, I ended up using maybe 3 pounds of the stuffing. Don't mind me. Hard to tell, don't have a scale big enough to measure for surezies. I'm gonna round it up to 4 pounds just to be generous. Where am I gonna put this now? It's a little crooked and I can't decide if that's my thing or the stand's thing. I'm gonna tweak it a little, but we're pretty much done. Yay! Ba-bum-ba-dum-bum-bum. If you left the cardboard out of the, places the cardboard is, you could just make this whole thing as a weird body pillow. It's quite comfy. Okay though, final thoughts. The final cost of this darling was $83.53. Once again, here is the breakdown for you. I ended up using about 2.5 yards of fabric. I know we had not address that at any point. The final time that it took, and I did commit to actually getting a more accurate timing this time, yay, 16 hours and 45 minutes. Ish. And like obviously that amount of time will range depending on your level of sewing skill. So the amount of skill that I would say that this required, pretty dang high. Like, I'm not gonna say you shouldn't try to sew this unless you're a certain level of sewist. No, like, you'll wanna make one, go for it. I think if you are a beginner or a fairly new sewist, I would just say really expect it to take a while and really put in the time to do stuff like marking your seam lines, triple checking everything, pinning a million times. Pros. It's pretty. It's aesthetically pleasing. It looks nice. Yay! Even without my pattern matching. The only thing that I don't like about the layout of where everything went is this. The double of the red flower right here, right next to each other with both of them cut off. That annoys me. Everything else, I don't care. It is pinnable all over, not just in the neck where you have a great little pin cushion, but all over the whole form, which will make it a lot easier to do draping and stuff. The patterning is done for you by the company, and that includes the support system, their method of, structuring the whole thing and making it able to go on a stand. That's already been figured out for you, it's already been patterned out for you, and that's definitely a pro. And because I had it as a con on the first one, I'm gonna have to throw it as a pro on this one. No second human required. Cons. It requires you to have sewing skill and sewing tools. It's a bit of a time commitment. It's not a quick one-day project. It's not like, hey, I need a dress form, let me whip that together. That's, again, not really a bad thing, but in comparison to the first one, could be considered a con. The proportions and measurements are not quite as accurate as a dress form you've made literally by molding your body. I'll say this, the measurements of like hips, waist, bust are what I gave them. Everything kind of looks right when you look at it very specifically, but like, something about it doesn't look right to me. This just doesn't feel like what my bust looks or feels like, if we're being honest. And finally, it is a little bit more on the costly side, especially compared to dress form 1, and especially if, you know, you're not able to get fabric as cheaply as I did. I know people have really a range of opinions on fabric prices. It's really fascinating to see. I'll get comments on the same video of one person saying, $5 a yard? Where do you even find fabric for $5 a yard? That's so cheap. And someone else at the exact same time will say $5 a yard is not cheap for fabric. There's a range of opinions on price is all that I'm saying. But if you're not able to get fabric as inexpensive as $5 a yard, this could run the price tag up a little bit more, especially considering you do need like a good upholstery fabric, something really sturdy. You need that really sturdy inner fabric. And my interfacing cost more than all of my fabric, and that was with getting it on sale. So really make sure you budget in the price of your interfacing, because it's a lot. Those are my thoughts. The only other one that I have is when you are stuffing this, if you choose to make this, you really have to be careful at the beginning. Like, don't just throw a bunch of stuffing in there. After going back and shoving a whole lot in there after I stopped filming, I still do not have enough in the shoulders and in the back of the neck. There's a dip right now of where there's not enough stuffing putting it out. I also realized that the reason it was going crooked was because I had stuffed it more on one side of that inner stabilizing piece of fabric than on the other. So it was pushing the whole pole in one direction. So you really do have to be careful and go a little slower when you're stuffing, I'd say, everything from like your bust above. I can still technically get up there. I can still fix that, which is great. It's great that you're not like shut off from that, but it's way harder now. So take your time at the beginning. That was dress form 2. We have one more to go. For the final form, for my final form, I'm gonna kind of combine dress form 1 and dress form 2, because we're gonna make a mold of my body, but then we're going to turn that mold into a custom pattern. This time though, the material is going to be foam rather than fabric, because we gotta mix it up. And here's the best part of me not doing this video for a year. The thin sewable, I think it's called bra foam that you would typically use for this, usually is pretty expensive, and I kind of thought I would just have to go out and buy it. But in the course of this year of procrastinating on this project, I found this fairly massive roll of foam at Remainders for their good old $4 a yard. Yay! I'm not really sure what it's for. I think it's a little thicker than your typical bra foam, but I'm sure I can make it work. Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
You don't have anything else you need to be doing, right? Same song, second verse, because we're back to getting taped up. I was gonna try wrapping myself completely in cling wrap instead of starting with the t-shirt this time, but honestly, the t-shirt worked great, and Matt had another one in his donate stash, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. $0. I was able to procure my second human for a second time, despite his schedule being much busier right now. He still hasn't sent me an invoice for his services, so I'll continue to assume they're free. $0. And again, the small amount of cling wrap we used around the neck and the bootay was probably less than 50 cents, but I'll call it 50 cents. What I am changing up this time is the type of tape. I got a masking tape along with the duct tape because I figured it was less expensive, so I might as well see if it works for the lower price. Only I clearly wasn't up for on-the-spot math, because at $19.98 for 5 rolls, that's basically $4 a roll, it's actually more expensive than the duct tape, which was $3.33 per roll. However, in the course of this second taping session, we quickly learned that the masking tape is preferable to the duct in many ways. It's easier to tear and therefore quicker to use. We took about half the amount of time to get me fully taped up. It doesn't wrinkle as badly, or at least the wrinkles don't stand out as much because it's thinner, so we were able to do a lot larger pieces, which again, sped things up. And because it's thinner, especially with a dark shirt underneath, it was easy to see which areas needed another layer. There's also more tape on a single roll than the duct tape, which is likely why it costs more, so we ended up only using 1 and maybe like 1/8 of a roll to fully tape me. Even though we don't need any extra tape later, I'm still gonna put the cost as 2 full rolls, since you can't buy 1/8 of a roll. $8. Because I'm cutting this into pieces this time, I had Matt draw a lot of lines on before we cut the whole thing off of me. A process that took a bit of care and time in itself. But finally, he cut straight up the back and straight through my sports bra and wiggled me out of this contraption. Nice.
This is holding pretty well.
Yeah, I think I prefer this tape. Several days later, because I'm intimidated by a bunch of tape apparently, we're moving on! Technically, because we're making a pattern, I only need half my body in form. However, it really seemed like the only way to get a nice, tight, proper fit was to tape the entire body, so I'm gonna save this other half for the next time I'm making a corset or something. I want to do fairly small pattern pieces, not long strips like the Bootstraps pattern, but more of rectangles? Little rectangles? I don't know if this is the best method because I'm winging it here. Remember how I said I'd put any tutorials I followed in the description? I have followed none. Is anyone surprised? No. But my thought is this. I want the pattern pieces small enough that they lay flat with no wrinkling. So this piece here I was gonna do as one, but when I tried to flatten it out, it's kinda wonky. I'm gonna cut it up the middle and turn it into two pieces, and now each of those smaller pieces lay flat really nicely. So after insane amounts of marking notes and some semi-precise snipping, I ended up with 25 pattern pieces that I might turn into 27 in the course of continuation. It's time for the next material, that foam. I think you should cut these things one at a time. What do you think? Do you think that is a delicious pom-pom? Pom-pom. Like I said before, I got all of this for $4 a yard at Remainders, and as with the Bootstraps one, I won't really know what my yardage is until I'm done. How many yards is 102 inches, puppy? Oh, so much upside downies. I love you so much, but you're making it so hard to work. Can I have my fabric? That's even less helpful. The reason I wanted to use foam is that you can put the whole thing together with a zigzag stitch connecting the two edges. In other words, no seam allowances needed, which kind of makes the whole process easier in my opinion. Granted, my opinion is based on not having done it yet, so take that with a grain of salt. The downside of using black foam is that I can't mark all over it with my pens, so I'm having to get creative to make sure each puzzle piece stays labeled properly. Good thing I'm into puzzles lately. We ended up with a nice, even 30 pieces to this one. One side done. And now we sew. Y'all, it was a little touch and go there at the start, but all the issues were paired delightfully with this rousing success. So, well, I'll just let me in the moment tell you how it went. Oh, I like that. Ooh, dare I say, I think this is gonna be fun. What's happening here? Also, why am I bleeding? Oh, well, there's a bunch of fuzz under there. Okay, that was right under the needle, so whoops. I think we're okay. All right. Y'all, this is pretty, deeply satisfying. It's got shape to it already, and everything is matching up. Ah! Oh, did you see panic cross my face? Walla walla bing bong. I'm so happy about this, and it's going really well. That didn't sound good. This is the thing, I keep having issues, but it's looking so good in between all of those issues that I'm still in a pretty good mood about it. I am trying to sew rather thick foam with a Singer fashion mate, so we can't complain too much. Alrighty. That's 1/4. That's half of the back completed. What are you doing? Being a helpful boy? Booty. Oh, thank you. I quickly discovered that the main thing you need here, other than perhaps a sewing machine better suited to going through rubber, is strong hands. In order to get those curves, the whole 3D shape of it all, you have to make sure you've cut your pieces properly to size, you trust yourself that you cut them properly to size, and then you make those sizes match up even when it seems like they won't. Y'all, gobsmacked by how well this turned out so far and how easy that was. I mean, hey, fun story, guess what I just realized? It completely left my brain that if you're making two different sides of something from the same pattern, you have to flip the pattern pieces over the second time you cut them out. So like these right here, these are making another left side. I need a right side. I am also now remembering that I originally planned to turn this foam wrong side out, I guess, while doing this, because this side is almost like a terry cloth. I know it's black so you can't see anything, just trust me on it. It's almost like a terry cloth feeling, which is fine. I think it looks nice still, but it's definitely like stuff is gonna get stuck on it really easily, whereas the other side is just a smooth foam feel and I think looks a little nicer and a little more professional. But I think it's too late for that too. My brain is still processing this, but as far as I can think right now, I am going to have to cut out one entire side of the dress form all over again. Luckily, I have plenty of foam, so this is not the end of the world. I do think I have the option right now to turn this entire thing wrong side out, and I'm still gonna have to cut out the other side, but do the other side wrong side out as well. See how like smooth this side is? Oh, there we go. I'll just wash it out and now you can see it. So smooth. This side, very fuzzy. Already has a lot of stuff stuck to it. I'll just be here thinking on that for a bit. Okay, thanks, bye. Okay, I'll break this down for you real quick. Since I had all the pieces cut out already, I went ahead and sewed up the second side, only I flipped all the pieces so I was sewing the inside on top, thereby making it the outside. I wanted to see if I prefer the inner foam more, so now that I have one side of each version, I can compare, and I immediately prefer the first one I did with the fuzzy material on the outside. The inside foam has more puckers at the seam lines, and it shows every mistake. I also tried out an adjustment in the armpit where I have this poof of material sticking out, likely just because that's a tough place to tape accurately. I don't actually have that poof on my body though, so I trimmed it down a bit on my second try, only I clearly didn't trim it down enough, hence this weird lump. Then I considered if I could just have a two-toned black dress form and not have to cut out and sew another half, but I quickly decided no way, especially since I'm actually quite enjoying this sewing process. Inside out half gets the dump and we're back to sewing foam together with no problems whatsoever, right? No problems, right? Now what, genius? How am I gonna do this? I think I figured it out. Maybe. Oh, we're so close. Genuinely blown away that this is working. No! This was not good timing. It could have been worse timing, but this was not great. Can I thread a needle in here? Frick, yeah, I can. I did it! We have a shell! And y'all, this did not jam one single time today, sewing the entire second half and then sewing it together. I don't know why it was jamming so much yesterday, and then today it's like, no, I'm okay, I'm fine. This is all good, but thank you. My next step was attaching the armhole and neck covers, which was intense. But I managed it, as did my little machine, with just a few jams. Overall, I used a little more than one spool of thread for this form. They're $7, so I'll casually round it up to $9. I'm taking a cue from the Bootstraps pattern and stuffing the neck with foam, which will also have a sort of notch in it to keep the center pole where it should be. Again, I'm gonna call this $0 since it was leftover stuff in my closet. That center pole is another 5-footer, $5.35. Could have gotten a shorter one since I had to cut this one down anyway, but oh well, hindsight is 20/20. And now we're gonna go ahead and stuff it, because I want the form all puffed up to what it should be so I can get a proper measurement and shape for that bottom cover piece, which is basically all I have left. I believe I used another 4 pounds-ish of stuffing, so that's $14.40 again. Things started to devolve here for reasons we will talk about in a moment, but that is why my filming of the remaining process might be a bit lackadaisical. Suffice it to say, I got a bottom cover cutout somehow, added a separating zipper, $5.99, one side on the form and one side on the bottom piece, wrangled that all together, and okay, let's just go take a look. Okay, so before we get to the cost and time and skill, etc., I must tell you some things. Really just one thing. I'm not sure how much you could tell in the footage, but this darling DIY is too big. I forgot about ease, or negative ease, the stretch of the fabric. And of course, I didn't consult a tutorial or anything, or even measure as I went. No, why would you do that? Although I don't think it would have clued me in, even if I did measure as I went, because I didn't realize this was happening until I started stuffing it. And then I measured the hips after realizing that the bust and waist are like 2 to 3 inches bigger than mine, and the hips were exactly my size. And I was like, okay, what's happening here? And then it dawned on me that it was because I had only stuffed here. I hadn't stuffed the hips yet. So it's when you stuff it that it stretches out and becomes too big. And there's a whole like math equation thing that you do to account for that when you're making a pattern. And I didn't do it. So long story short, or long story exactly as long as it would always be, I briefly considered completely starting over, like scrapping this and starting from square one. But ultimately, my experiment here was to test the cost, the time, and the skill needed to DIY a dress form. And I feel like the fact that this one turned out too big is part of that experiment. It needs to be documented as part of it. Also, although I had literally been thinking to myself about 17 minutes before this realization that this was such a fun process, I wouldn't mind doing the whole thing again. When reality came crashing down upon me, I quickly realized that maybe I wouldn't mind doing it all again, but I didn't exactly want to do it all again right now. So I am going to hold on to this one for now. I am going to learn from it, take some notes, not just on that, but on several other things we'll talk about in a second, and use that experience to eventually make a second one that is hopefully more accurate to my size. And this one, whenever I'm done with it, I'll either give it away to like remainders, their craft space, or maybe to somebody who does have these measurements. So now let's get down to brass tacks. Why brass tacks? This baby cost $48.24 to make, and as before, here is the breakdown of all those costs. Again, I don't think I touched on it before, so note here that I ended up using about 1 1/4 yards of the foam. That's not counting the entire half of this that I cut out incorrectly on accident. That wouldn't be part of a normal process, so I'm not counting that in the cost or anything. The total time that it took was about 8.5 hours, and I actually have a little breakdown of that too, because I got better at keeping track of time up until the end, which is where you can see that it became less of a priority. Once again, I did not count into this the amount of time that it took me to sew up the half that I ended up discarding, or to cut out a new half to replace it, because as I said, like, that wouldn't be part of the process if you didn't have a major brain fart. And the skill level, in my opinion. I was all prepared prior to, you know, the realization to say that this was a mid-range skill level. Sewing it together, cutting it out, even making the pattern, none of it was that hard. So to me, I was like, this really is sort of halfway between dress form 1 and dress form 2 when it comes to skill and effort needed. However, I don't feel like I can call it mid-skill when the end result is so inaccurate. It clearly needed more skill, which I did not devote to it. So I have to call it a high skill as well, simply because there was more technique and knowledge needed than what I used. Pros. While it does still require sewing skills, I would consider them to be lighter sewing skills than the Bootstraps form. Like, honestly, I cannot stress enough how easy it was to sew all these foam pieces together, even though my machine kept jamming up. Sometimes wrangling this feels like wrangling a hungry alligator. But that's kind of the beauty of it, is like, you can do anything to this. I was like pulling it, pushing it, twisting it, bopping it, and it would just bounce back to exactly as it was before. So I felt more confident using this than I do using fabric. I really want to sew on foam more. It was cheaper. I did this one last because I thought it would be the most expensive and the most difficult. And if we ignore the fact that it's the wrong size, it would actually be middle placement for both of those things. It looks pretty. I think it looks pretty professional, despite being a slightly wonky here and there. Maybe a little more than slightly in some places, but I think the foam and all of the zigzag seams and everything look really nice. And like the Bootstraps one, it is pinnable. Like, not quite as easily pinnable, or there's a little more resistance to the pins, which might be something you prefer, actually. I don't know. Cons. You do still need sewing skills. I put that on the cons for the Bootstrap one, so it has to go on here as well. You need a machine, you need to know how to sew. Foam can be expensive. You may not be able to find it as cheap as this, and it also does require some strength to wrestle it through your machine. You are once again on your own to figure out the support system inside, which I did not do a great job of on here. It's a little saggy here on the bottom and a little bit crooked. But yeah, you're on your own again for that, and also for, you know, the little quirks of patterning like negative ease. And the second human is back in the game as a required playing piece. You do need your second human again to do the original taping up. This has been a lot. The hilarious thing about this is I really thought I would end this video having 3 dress forms that are basically the right size for me, and like, why do I need 3 dress forms? What am I gonna do with those? When in fact I have ended up with 0 dress forms that are actually my size and usable. Update on dress form number 1 for you. After sitting in my studio for literally weeks, just sitting here looking the same, nothing has changed. We like went on Christmas vacation, and the morning we were back, I looked at it again. It looked exactly the same. Everything is fine. I came into my studio that evening and it had begun to leak the foam. I have no idea why that started happening right then. Like, was there a temperature change that was just right? Was the air pressure a certain way? So boggled. But yeah, she's got bubbles now, y'all. Little bubbles. And I threw her outside, so she is a little dirty. Very rock hard though. Update on dress form number 2. I kind of realized finally why the top part looks so weird to me. It's because I'm used to dress forms. I did it with this one, I did it with the third one. All of the dress forms I've seen are like this. that go slightly past the shoulder bone up here and cut in here-ish. Whereas the Bootstrap's dress form goes straight up right here and cuts off kind of where that bone is, or even like right before it, which gives it this weird narrow look up top that just throws your brain off because it's like, where's the shoulders? I'm not sure why they design it that way, but yeah, that's why it looks weird to me. So she's not perfect. She is a little smaller than me, kind of everywhere, but that's on me again for not wanting to spring for a second pattern after a year went by. She is the one that I will most likely be utilizing up until I make myself a new foam one. I mean, hey, maybe I'll finally grow into dress form 3. She is still my favorite. I like the way it looks. I like the way it feels. I really do want to make another one sometime not too far in the future and just apply everything I learned from this, because it's a lot. I learned a lot. My 3 ladies. I hope this whole very unscientific experiment has been helpful to you, or possibly even entertaining to observe from a safe distance. If you are looking to DIY a custom dress form, I think all 3 of these are a decent option, which is why this video was not about like which one is best. I wanted to give you those full breakdowns just so that you would have as much information as possible to make an informed decision on which one you want to invest the time and the money and the skill into. Like, it's less about which of these is best and more about which one is the best for you. And last but not least, they all need names. It needs to be like 3 coordinating names, but also they should take into account like all of their individual characteristics. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you for watching. This was a big one, and therefore I assume a long one as well. Later, taters.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Snot. I made myself friends.
I should stop singing so you can use this footage.
That's my story.
Good story.
Would you like to go with me?
No. View hello.
It's called trolling.
Is it? I'm getting like Glinda and Elphaba vibes from these girls. And the Tin Man?
Well, sucks for you, doodly-doo.
Oh, big shakes. Do you do big shakes? Do you not understand why mommy points it out?
Love me, love me. Please don't forget me.